guys, it's Ruby, and today we are going to talk about something that is potentially scary for many people about the US government and their ability to essentially prevent depositors from withdrawing money from financial institutions. So I'm going to give you a very quick history lesson where you can kind of understand where quite a few economists are looking at our current situation and making calls and stating that, you know what, history could possibly repeat itself. And so, let's kind of dive in and let's have a look. So in 1933, FDR did a gold confiscation, and essentially that gold confiscation was a bailout of the Federal Reserve Bank. So we go back to 1913, the Federal Reserve was established and it began issuing Federal Reserve notes the following year. And as a result of that, there was a lot of paper money. And fast forward 2023, we had a pandemic that a lot of people have never experienced in their lifetime. And there was a lot of money being given out, stimuluses being given out. So, I'm drawing a parallel just so you understand where I'm going with this. So in 1913, as this paper money was starting to increase and it was very abundant, there was an economic boom, known as the Roaring 20s. So that was from like 1923 to 1929. But it was just like an artificially induced stimulus, kind of like what we had happen during the pandemic. But it all came to a crash in about the fall of 1929. And there was a burden of overextended credit, which was the culprit. And essentially, prior to that, the paper money being in the economy, there was a lot of circulation of copper, silver, and gold coins, and silver certificates and gold certificates. But all these things were non-interest bearing, and they were issued directly by the US Treasury. And there was no debt issued or debt associated with the issuance of this. But because they lent out so much paper money and there was debt associated with it, the bank was more than willing to lend it, and they made qualifications easier. And so people had more of a willingness to replace their gold and their silver with this paper money. So they became redeemable in gold. So essentially, you could trade your gold in for this paper money. And what happened was there's always a expansion and contraction of the economy, and the contraction led to a stock market crash and what we all know as the Great Depression. And everyone was suddenly reluctant to borrow, and banks were reluctant to lend. And so what happened? Well, essentially, there was a gold run, something like what we're experiencing with these bank runs, but the footing of the United States became very shaky. In European countries, which were holding substantial quantities of the US gold, notes were beginning to present them to exchange them for physical gold. And all of a sudden, the US government's fixed price started to get affected. And as the Great Depression happened, the price of gold started creeping up. And obviously, the value of the dollar was thousands of banks had depositors withdraw money and do bank runs, which caused the Great Depression. But it also was imminent that, the government could not tolerate that. And because of that, neither the Federal Reserve nor the Treasury had anywhere near enough gold to back all the gold certificates and the Federal Reserve notes that were in circulation. And for this reason, they decided that they would do essentially what's called a typical gold exchange clause on gold certificates issued by the US Treasury. And the clause essentially looks something like this: in gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. And so that continued, from 1928, and they continued to start printing redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury or in gold or lawful money at Federal Reserve Bank. So essentially, that was proof that the Federal Reserve and the banks and the US Treasury were in serious trouble. They didn't have enough gold to back the notes that they issued. And because of that, they started to do something very, very unconstitutional. Yeah, essentially in 1933, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, issued an executive order outlawing the private ownership of gold in the United States. Now, I would say that's very unconstitutional, but why did he do it? Well, many historians and economists point to the efforts to get the economy moving again. And people were hoarding gold, and the velocity of money in circulation needed to speed up. But the real reason for the gold confiscation was to bail out the privately controlled Federal Reserve Bank. And right now, we can see what's going on. We've had major banks close down. We have had the larger players come out and bail some of these banks. And essentially what that means is we have the government, who is now, and very well could be, they're not doing it right now, but they very well could decide that they are going to take away the depositors' ability to withdraw their own funds. And, a lot of people who might be watching this might say, well, that can't happen. Well, it did happen. It happened in 1933. And where our M2 money supply is definitely declining, and you are seeing kind of a lot of panic in the markets. And because of that decline, and M2, just so you know, are deposits. They're not loans. So essentially the deposits are fleeing the system and they're going to money market funds. So that essentially means that I'd rather not put my money in the bank. I mean, who really would? If you have more than 250, put it in the bank. They're putting it in the money market. And what's happening is, because of that, the M2 supply is down, which is cash supply or money supply, deposit supply. So essentially, the Treasury and the Fed may have to come in and actually restrict your right as a US citizen to pull any money out of the US banking sector. And it's not just because of fears on whether the FDIC will insure the deposits over 250, but essentially it's the fear that we don't have enough cash or liquid being put into these banks, and some of these banks are on thin ice. So really, I've said it multiple times, but I really do believe that your funds, your cash, should be in something other than being in the bank. So if you want to put it in the money market, that's fine. I still say that you should have it in gold, and real estate, and maybe even cryptocurrency. I've never spoken about cryptocurrency, but honestly, I think it's going to be safer than cash. I do really believe that we are in a very weird place right now, and we are going to start seeing the loss of our US dollar and a decline, and the value of the US dollar decline. And if this happens, then your money in the bank, yeah, you might have $1 million in the bank. That $1 million is going to be worth half of that, especially if these other countries are going to be trading in their own currencies or creating their own currency, and the US is going to be left out. So my thought is, real estate is going up. The market is weird. There's all sorts of news, but we are still seeing multiple offers in cash. And I'll give you an example. I had one of my luxury listings on the market at just over 3 million, 3.2 to be exact. And we sold with multiple offers, and we sold 3 out of the 4 offers in that $3.5 million range were all cash. That tells you what's happening in the economy. So I hope this helps. If you've got questions, feel free to reach out to me. That's it for now. Please make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps me get more content out to you. And until next time, bye for now.